I'd like to welcome you back to our final session for the day. And to start our closing session, we'd like you to just take a few minutes and on the back of that blue sheet or wherever maybe you have been jotting notes for the day, kind of reflect back all the way to this morning and look over your day and make some notes about what you want to be very intentional about taking back to your building after today. So we're going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. Just kind of look through your whole day and think about, what do I want to be intentional about taking back to my building?
As you're writing some notes about your intentionality and bringing your learning back to your buildings and districts, I'm going to talk with you about some upcoming professional learning opportunities. This is in the Google Classroom if you want to refer back to it. Part of our services as early literacy coaches at the Kent ISD is done through an instructional round process. And so we are inviting people to be a part of that process or just to learn about that process in order to bring it back to your district. So that spring we held by invitation only, kind of training to get our feet wet and train other people about how we're doing instructional rounds across the county. And some of you are in this room, and some of those people have moved on into other roles. So we're looking to train some more people, and we think we've refined that process a bit. On December 5th from 12:30 to 3:30 p.m., we will be holding a half-day training about the instructional rounds process, what it is, how you might use this in your building or district to think about teaching and learning practices. If you're interested, there is a Bit.ly there, Bit.ly rounds training you can fill out with contact information. We will get in touch with you about more details. If you know somebody who is not here, who is in a coaching role or a leadership role who might be interested in being a part of that, please direct them to this form as well. We are also planning for late winter and early spring to do our Essentials in Action again. So last year we literally took people on a field trip, an adult field trip. It was very fun. In fact, we have interest coming in from all around the western Michigan area and even across the state to learn more about what we did. And so we will be doing some Essentials in Action again. Last year we focused on Essential number 2 in the K-3-4-5 essential practices, which was read aloud. This time we plan to have sessions focus around student motivation and engagement, and that will start in late January and go into February. Each session would be the same, so we will do the same session like 3 times. And our intent is to visit 2 or 3 schools across the county. So last year we took people to Ada Elementary to see a 4th grade teacher plan around instructional read alouds, and then we went to Wyoming Public Schools to see a 2nd grade classroom, and then we went up to Comstock Park to see a kindergarten classroom, all focused around read aloud. So this year we're looking for host teachers. Our Essentials in Action begins at the end of January, as I said, and then as we move into more of that March, April, beginning of May period, we'll be focusing on small group instruction. So if you know someone in your school, or if you are willing to host a countywide learning lab, we would come in and coach you around that and see where your thinking is, what work you've done around student motivation, engagement, or small group instruction, and then bring people to visit and ask you to open your thinking and talk to us about the process that you've done to learn around those areas in your school. So if you're interested in that, or you know someone in your building or district who would be willing to be a host, we have another Bit.ly down there, EIA for Essentials in Action host. If you could fill that out, that would be a great help to us and to teachers around the county. Let me go back to that Essentials in Action. One thing that we very intentionally do there is this is not a standalone field trip. You must bring a team. We build this into place to say there are things and supports to continue the conversation back in your district once you go back, or your school building. So last year we said an administrator or teacher leader must come with an instructional coach and up to 3 classroom teachers. So a team of 5 people. So we can accommodate usually up to 3 teams at a time. And we do take a school bus, and we do order lunch, and we do have lots of good dialogue around what's going on in classrooms and buildings. Here are some other professional learning opportunities. Include Ed through a culture of dignity is here. It's an equity workshop coming up very shortly in about 11 days. We also have some learning in November and December related to word study, phonics, phonemic awareness type of activities. So you can see grade 4, 5, and K1 there. I believe the 2, 3, 1 happened earlier this week. Cognitive coaching is starting up, Foundations Part 2. If you've taken Part 1, at the beginning of December into January, there's 4 days there. You can find out more information on that in the PD Hub. I believe it's linked there as well. And then Adapt to Schools Foundation starts in mid-January and goes through February. If you have not taken that, I highly recommend it. Jill Jackson will be here at the end of February for one of our LCN speakers. There is a separate registration for that. How to coach teachers to teach almost anything. And I think that's at Watermark Country Club out in Cascade. So if you want to learn any more, you can click on the links there and go through the PD Hub.
Since you've had some time to reflect on your blue forms, we are going to go ahead and jump into kind of our closing and our reflection time. So our goal for this closing is to, first of all, synthesize our learning for the day, and second of all, have a plan for how we're going to communicate these items back to our districts. And so we are going to be starting off with our survey, and please remember the goal behind our survey. We have done this in a way that helps us go through steps of reflection, and so we are going to start with you kind of giving us some feedback on the environment and the overall learning of the day, and then we're going to ask you to kind of dive in a little bit deeper into your sessions and to provide feedback on those sessions and reflection on those sessions. And hopefully that thinking throughout the survey will then lead up into the problem of practice work that you will be diving into after the survey. So you can either use the survey link if you are in the presentation, or there's also a bit.ly down here at the end. We really use this information, and we always meet after LCN, and we go through and we listen to all of your feedback, and we try to make changes to our sessions based on your feedback. So it's very important for us to get this information from you. But also, we really hope that this will help you to be able to think more thoroughly into jumping into that problem of practice. So we're going to give you about 10 minutes or so to kind of go in and complete the survey.
Okay, if you would finish, if you're typing, finish your sentence. If you are reading, finish the sentence you're reading. If you are done, then start to wrap up your conversation. And we're going to walk you into the next part of our work time. And this is really going to be the biggest chunk of time that you're given today to work through your problem of practice. So if you would just pause your survey if you're not finished yet, that's okay. You'll have time to go back and finish up. But we're going to revisit this idea of problem of practice. And this graphic comes from sort of the business and engineering design world. And it's a process called human-centered design. And so what human-centered design does is it takes the person into account when designing or figuring things out. So if you are an engineer and you're working with a manufacturing company, you really need to know who your end user is in order to engineer the products and processes that need to be put in place for your end user. For us as teachers, we've taken this into the education realm and started to think about who are our sort of end users. Who are the people that we are supporting? It might be teachers, it might be students, it might be both. But within that, there's some place where we often feel stuck. We often feel like we're struggling and working towards something but not making any progress. Or sometimes there's something within ourselves that we know we need to grow in and we're not quite sure how to get there. That's your problem of practice. So when you think about that problem of practice, you first need to start with knowing who those people are. And you need to know who they are, their strengths, their areas of need, and their context. Once we know who those people are and we know what they might need, then we start to define what might our problem of practice be. Like I mentioned this morning, this defining is about 90% of the work. If you don't have a clear definition of what you're working towards, it's hard to test out a theory and see if it's actually working because you don't really know what you're working towards. So that problem of practice needs a very clear, succinct definition. Once you've defined your problem of practice, then you can start to gather ideas. That's this ideate phase. That's what you did today. That's what's on your blue note-taking sheet with those 4 squares, are all of those ideas that are helping to move you forward in your problem of practice. When you go back to your districts, you will be working in this prototype and test areas. You're going to take those ideas and actually communicate them to someone and put them into practice. And then once you've tried them out a little bit, you've fully tested them, that gives us more information to where this process is no longer linear, but it becomes a little bit more messy, just like we talked about this morning. Because your testing might help you redefine the problem. It might actually give you more insight into who these people are that we're working with and give you more empathy. Which then, if you have more information about the people you're working with, you might actually need to redefine your problem again. Sometimes it just brings you back to, okay, this is going really, really well. I want to add this idea in. So think about where you were this morning in this process, what new ideas you've gathered, and what your next step might be. Your next step in this process might be moving forward to prototyping. It might be moving backwards to empathizing and defining. In Google Classroom, you've been given it's called an assignment, but really it's called an assignment so that each of you can get your own copy and not have to worry about making a copy in Google Drive, okay? So if you open that sort of assignment that's been given to you in Google Classroom, it's called, I think it's called Problem of Practice. It might be called Implementation Guide. I can't remember. Problem of Practice? Beautiful. That's what it should be called, so that's good. And in here, some of you have started this last time. If you were here with us and you started this last time, you may want to begin in this test and evidence. It says complete before LCN the next day, but let's be honest, this doesn't always happen. Okay? So we're going to give you a little bit of time to go back and think through and reflect on what did you try in the past month? How did it go? And not only what did you try and how did it go, but how do you know that it went well? How do you know that it didn't go well? How do you know that you have things to revise? What's your evidence? It might be anecdotal evidence. It might be numbers evidence. It might be conversation evidence. It might be picture evidence. What evidence do you have that you tried something and how it went? Once you've done this test and evidence, move back up to the top. Add today's date in here and revise or redefine your problem. Then under ideate, add today's date in this box and add new ideas that you want to try out. And then add today's date in the prototype box to add in things that you want to try when you go back to your district and who you might need to communicate that with. If you were not here last time or you did not complete this guide last time, begin here with empathize and define, and then work your way through. Okay? You have about 20 minutes of work time before we wrap up together. If you work best in dialogue with someone, then make sure that you're sitting next to a trusted partner that's okay with talking back and forth. If you work better on your own, then find a space where you can work on your own. Either way is okay, but you have about 20 minutes to work through this process. If you have questions as you go, please let us know. We're here to support your thinking and your work. Okay?